the red Fs in them, would there be a likelihood that there would be other of the species that you're looking for in vernal pools?
Well, the red-spotted newts don't require vernal pools, so not necessarily. Yeah, so they will move. The adults will move from pond to pond. That they like shrink up their tail fins and will wander considerable distances if the ponds dry up. So that's why they're considered facultative vernal pool species, because they're rather than obligate, because they're not necessarily going to mean that they're going to be spotted salamanders and wood frogs there. There might be though.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you for that great presentation. Just had a quick question. How does this affect roads, like backcountry roads that have amphibians, multiple species laying eggs in the middle of the road? Is there any hope for any kind of
land that has a road?
Yes, yeah.
Do you mean how does vernal pool certification affect?
Yeah, is that even something that could even happen? It's a backcountry dirt road that's not decommissioned. It's still an active road for ATVs, unfortunately, but so yeah, in the springtime, it's full of amphibians, spotted salamander, wood frog, all sorts of like, yeah, but they're in the middle of the road. And they're
But
driven
this is like a woods road though, rather than
yeah. Is there any kind of rules for that? Are there any kind of rules for that, or
it's worth trying and seeing what they do with it. DCR once hired me to document vernal pools in state forests, and I documented some that were just like they had been created by ATVs driving through wetlands. And, and they weren't. They were kind of annoyed about that because
probably
it meant they would have to reroute the ATV trails and potentially damage wetlands more. But you can, I feel like it's worth documenting anywhere that these species are breeding and let the vernal pool biologists decide what makes sense to do about it.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
One of the things that they suggested that if I found that is to look in that vicinity and try and certify the ones that were not necessarily driven through, but so that those could be protected, because it often means that they're adjacent to, or you hope they are, that they weren't the only one.
All right, Valerie has her hand raised.
Thank you. Charlie, I have a question about the temperature. If it's, you said about 40 degrees at night, so are you talking about that would be the highest highest temperature? And I mean, is it through the entire night, or I mean,
so it's not there's not really a maximum temperature. It's the first rainy nights that are at least that warm, you'll start to see things moving. And I've just the past few days, the blue spotted salamanders in the southeastern part of the state have been moving. So it won't be long, maybe.
Okay. It would probably be a rainy night.
Yeah, and if there's a drought and it's like getting late in the season, then they'll just go when it feels like it's time. But they'll go if there's a rainy night at any point from now on that's that warm, that they'll be moving.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think Sarah Hamilton is the next person with their hand raised.
Hi, by what method do you get the owner's permission? Is there some sort of form? And there must be. And then secondly, could you talk about the range of strategies for working with owners to get their permission? I mean, I would imagine sometimes they may be curious and maybe not want to let you do it.
Sure. That's maybe Meredith, do you want to address that question?
Yes, I'm happy to try and tackle that one. Part of this group and this sort of exploration is developing some methods. So, you know, we don't come to this with all the answers, but there's a sheet that we've developed that are suggested questions, sort of first conversations. I've had a lot of luck with approaching landowners, not with, boy, can I certify your pool? But it looks like you might have a pool on your land. Would you mind if I come and look at it? And would you like to join me? Because once they see the little belly and you flip it over and they can see that it's golden, boy, then they're hooked. And you ask them to take photos and you ask them to do, you know, next steps. And maybe you plan the next year to come back. And that's when you can propose certification. And I have a lot of people say, you know, does this mean I won't be able to put a driveway there? And our first knee jerk is to say, oh no, well you can, but I always say absolutely. And isn't that wonderful? You know, that I think we can't be, we need to be bold about how incredible these are and how important it is. But I think part of what these reps and why we wanted them to be from the towns or as close as possible is that you're more likely to have relationships with people. But it is absolutely a difficult piece. And why we, thankfully, we were able to have Charlie do this recording is because now it's on the website, the Hilltown's Land Trust. And if you do have a friend or a landowner, they can also watch it and hopefully get as excited as we are.
Thank you.
So I don't see anyone with their hand raised with this hand raise function, but not sure if anyone else has any questions. They can write them in the chat or.
Charlie, can I ask Charlie a question? Can you talk a little bit about hands and being, you know, what you don't want to have when you're reaching in and holding eggs and all of that?
Yeah, well, basically, you don't want to have any chemicals on your. I don't ever put chemicals on my hands, so it's not something I think about. But yeah, bug spray or sunscreen or anything like that would be bad for amphibian skin and eggs.
And it's really important if you're with other people to chat a little bit about that, because we just forget. We put on bug spray or sunscreen or, you know, whatever it is that we think is protecting, or we've bought clothing that is to repel ticks. And then you walk into a pool and there can be, you know, unintended impacts.
Right.
Do you see anyone else with a question there, Audrey?
I do not.
The other thing I'd love to hear, both from Charlie and from any of our other participants, are sort of their favorite vernal pool experience.
Gosh, there are so many, it's hard to.
Sarah Hamilton has her hand raised.
Yeah, I had just a question about when you're starting out, what is the biggest source of confusion for you? I mean, you've been doing this for a while, but remember back when you didn't know anything. What are you most apt to get confused about or get wrong?
Well, I definitely, when I was little, there was a pond behind my parents' house, and I used to go down there and play with frogs and tadpoles and newts and things all the time. And I would see these egg masses, and I assumed they were frog eggs, like green frog eggs, because those were the the things I saw in there that seemed like they would make sense. And it was many years later that I learned that spotted salamanders exist, and that's what those egg masses were. But I think definitely starting out, it can be tricky to tell wood frog and spotted salamander egg masses just because they're similar sizes. But once you've seen both of them, hopefully this slideshow helped point out the differences. But those are the main things that can be confused. And then distinguishing some of the different mole salamanders might be tricky, but luckily for the purposes of certification, you don't even have to know what you're looking at. You just have to document this is some kind of mole salamander and get enough egg masses.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, we have more hands. I saw Nellie Wilson was the first one who had their hand up.
So I'm unfortunately my video is not behaving tonight, but I'm the rep in Chesterfields, and I just you know, I've had some really wonderful experiences with pools and have been able to certify a couple at this point. And one of my favorite things is being able to return to a pool at different times of the year and really starting to get to know a place, and being able to see it from like the stage of there are a bunch of fresh egg masses in it to going back and there are larvae to going back in the fall when it's like pretty dried out, and then even going back in the winter and kind of seeing where it's filling up and what sort of other sort of animal activity is happening. And I'm not sure if this is something that's appropriate to bring up here, but I know we've been in communication a little bit about that there's folks from the Berkshire Environmental Action Team, I believe it is, that are looking to get involved with getting more vernal pools certified in the Hilltowns, and was wondering if there was going to be like any kind of follow-up or working to connect them specifically to like the reps in the different towns that we have.
Do you want me to take that, Audrey, or do you want to respond? Okay. Absolutely. Our hope is that we will team people up and have access to sharing where people want to be contacted. So if you live in an area or if you're interested in being a part, what Audrey will do is we'll send out the 16 towns that we're focused on in terms of this project, and the towns that you are willing to have us share your information with, then that rep can put a call out. And in terms of the Berkshire Environmental Action Team, it's sort of it's a step-by-step process where we'll have to ask all of the reps if we can share their information, if they feel comfortable being reached out to, or if they want to let the Berkshire Environmental Action Team know directly. So we'll be working on that in the next week. Next week, Audrey has set up a training. Charlie, I don't know if you've used the new system yet. It just got online.
I haven't.
Yeah, we love that we just trained everyone, but there were some glitches. So, even though you go, oh no, we have to start again, we're receiving lots of promises that it will be a little more streamlined and easier to navigate. And Audrey did a great job reaching out to them and setting up a training next week. She'll send that out to anyone on this call and also all the reps that weren't able to join us so that they can benefit from that training. It is during the day, so if you're unable to join us, but you're interested, Audrey assures me that she will learn it so well that she'll be able to do an evening training in addition to that daytime one. And just so everyone knows, we are all learning this together. And if people find a wonderful way to do something or a really cool tool that helps out, we don't want anyone to feel like we know it all. The only one that does is Charlie and probably a few other people. I see their names without seeing their faces. But
I saw Tom Tyning in there. He's definitely knows.
yeah, yeah. Yay, Tom. If anyone else has more questions, I would certainly encourage you to ask Charlie for, I'll start asking questions if others don't, just because I like to hear your stories.
Well,
Yeah, we had Valerie and then Pat, I think, and then you can go again, Meredith.
Oh, I'm so glad there's going to be a training because I tried to go into the new system and it didn't take my password. So that'll be great. And I just wanted to respond to Sarah, you know, what people found most difficult with this as a beginner. And I think my first pool was certified with a lot of help from Meredith in Plainfield. It was so exciting because it was Jefferson salamander eggs were there. So that was certified. But what I found most difficult, because I don't know how to use a smartphone for, you know, the directions to the pool, which has to be pretty exact. So my paces and the distance, you know, was a problem. And between Meredith and I and the scientist who was I was working with, you know, we got that all straightened out. But I need to figure out better how to give directions and measurements, you know, from a starting point to the pool. So any help with that, I'd love.
Well, it helps a lot to have a GPS unit and to be able to kind of fudge the directions. That's honestly what I've been doing for a long time at this point. But I used to do all the pacing and stuff. But yeah.
And
so
Wild and Scenic has 4 units that we're happy to loan out to the reps, to people that have had the full training. And then if you invite others to come along, highly recommend having different people in charge of different aspects, so you're not trying to remember everything. And before you leave the pool, Charlie did a wonderful thing where he had someone else look at the documentation so they could find all the things I'd forgotten to fill out because I was too excited.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the new hub, have you been on it, Charlie, at all? I
No,
think
I
there's
haven't.
this like mapping feature, but I haven't dove too deep into it. I don't know if that was what was in the old one.
there was well, yeah, I don't know how it compares, but there was a feature where you could bring up different map layers and draw on them or put points on them.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll go over that next week. A person from Natural Heritage. Yeah. Pat Maury, if you have something to say, now is your time.
Yeah, okay. I'm the rep in Goshen, and I just wanted to share that last year, I'm also in the open space committee in our town. And so we posted in the beginning of March, we posted some information about vernal pools and let people know that we were available to, if anybody, you know, thought they had a vernal pool. And so I did have somebody call me, and she wanted me to come out and tramp around her property, which I did. And we didn't actually find anything on her property, but then we started walking. She said, oh, well, there's something over here, there's something over there. And we actually found, you know, some other places along this road, and there was a pool at the end of the road. And she just was, I mean, she was so excited. That was like a really fun vernal pool experience. I think that one was actually in Williamsburg, and I didn't end up certifying that, but I might be able to go back to it this year. I'm not sure that it's been certified. And there was another one in Goshen that I did submit for certification, and I still haven't heard back whether it was certified. And I haven't been able to get on to this new site yet. But one thing that came up while I was in the process of certifying it was that the pool, the landowner was perfectly happy with me to, go on his property and certify the pool. But the pool was very close to the boundary of his neighbor. And so there was the whole question of the 100 feet and whether, his neighbor would object. So that was kind of an interesting issue that came up. And I think ultimately it seemed like even the 100 feet there was 100 feet between where the pool was and his neighbor's boundary. But it just kind of brought up that issue of, there could potentially be multiple or at least 2 owners if a pool crossed owner boundaries. So anyway, I'm also need help with this new site because I definitely couldn't get in.
One of the things that we'll be going over next week with and Audrey will send it out, is that we do have to all make new registrations. So
Yeah,
last
that's
year
right.
or 2 years ago, that was, you consider it your run through. And then it's a whole new site. So, but Pat, please bring up on the training, if you're able to join us with the person, to ask about that specific pool, because I'm not sure whether things are transferring or whether we have to.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if there was going to link, if I, set up a new registration, is it going to link to what I've submitted in the past?
I don't believe so, but we can ask them and maybe she can help us do that manually. We can make, a little guilt trip. No, no, we can either yours will be the first to resubmit, or we can, plead our case.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. I saw Tom Tining's hand raised. So
yeah, if you don't mind, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Charlie, thanks very much as usual. It's kind of amazing to hear you talk about things outside the layers of a leaf, for one thing, which is kind of impressive. But I can't quite remember, because I've seen all the permutations of the regulations on vernal pools. Is there a time limit on vernal pools being certified? That is to say, after X number of years, do they have to be recertified?
I've never heard anything about that. Obviously, with rare species, there's the 20-year, things go historic if they haven't been seen in 20 years, but I haven't ever heard anything like that for vernal pools. And I think my assumption is that they are just certified indefinitely unless someone demonstrates that the pool no longer holds water or something, but there would be the assumption that there are still things breeding there, and unless there's some documentation otherwise.
Yeah, I think, well, you're absolutely right about the rare species. Those have to be recertified also for their locations. I guess what I was suggesting is that if people are looking around for vernal pools, if you find one, just go ahead and do the paperwork and certify it, even if it's already been done. Partly because you might see a different species in there that somebody has missed before. And as Charlie can tell you also, not every species breeds every year, and some are rare enough that even if they do breed, they're easily missed. So my suggestion has always been just certify any pool you see. It's great to go onto the website and find the ones that are potential vernal pools and then work on those. But I'd say don't worry about finding every last one. Find any one you can and keep going at it. So that might be something for people not to worry about. And the other thing, and just one last comment, and maybe Meredith was looking for something that's not I have a lot of favorite opportunities inside vernal pools. Some are prettier than others, but at any rate, These vernal pools, in my mind, are the most endangered wetlands in Eastern North America. These are the pools that most people historically considered half-ass wetlands. And you did one of two things. You either dug them out and made farm ponds out of them, or you simply kept throwing all your branches and woody debris in there to make it real land. I have a totally unsubstantiated estimate that probably more than 90% of all vernal pools in the Northeast have already been destroyed. They've been destroyed in the first 100 years of European settlement. So these vernal pools are really important landscapes. And as Charlie mentioned, and most of you already know, being fishless doesn't mean they're not good wetlands. These fishless wetlands are incredibly important for a variety of amphibians and invertebrates who got here in ways we're not even sure. So after the glaciers left, how the hell does a spotted salamander walk from below the line where the glaciers were in eastern or central Pennsylvania and central New Jersey? How do they walk and cross all those rivers, including the Hudson, including the Connecticut, including the Westfield River? How in the hell did they do this in the first place? And it's only been several hundreds of years since we've even had a chance to do that, because they need forests around them. It's really a historic story that is really still yet to be told, and there's more and more to it. So anytime you just sit by a vernal pool, you know, stop doing all the paperwork for at least a few minutes and just sit and listen to those wood frogs quacking away, Charlie. It's really well worth doing. So anyway, that's enough of that soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, on that note, Meredith's question about favorite vernal pool experiences, I don't have just one, but I don't remember because I tuned in right at the end of my slideshow, so I don't remember how much I talked about looking at them at night. But if you ever have the opportunity to check one out at night with a headlamp, it's just a whole other world to see just flocks of fairy shrimp swarming around you and having great tree frogs yelling right in your ear and seeing all the caddis flies walking around with their little portable houses of sticks and leaves and all the other things. I mean, if you're lucky, you'll see the congressing spotted salamanders. And it's just, yeah, many great memories standing around in or at the edge of vernal pools in the middle of the night and seeing all the critters in there.
I would like to invite all the reps, if you are going back to a pool that you've already certified or that you know some of these species are going to be found, we're pondering how we let you contact the people in your area or that are on this Zoom info session know, so that you can, because we can't, I mean, I would love to organize a bunch of outings, but with COVID, I'm unable to do that. But small outings with multiple people sort of offering their favorite little pool, I really, hope that we can pull that off and then share the stories of those outings.
So it looks like Betsy has a question there.
Actually, I have two things. One is, I imagine because it's in an ecological habitat that it wouldn't be disturbing to them if mammals walk through, like if dogs walk through the area through a vernal pool. Is that something you want to try and prevent?
It's definitely not ideal for dogs to go. I mean, there's certainly raccoons and minks and all sorts of things that are parading through vernal pools all the time, but dogs, because they have so much extra energy, do have a disproportionate impact when they enter vernal pools. And they might be carrying diseases that some of the wild animals wouldn't have.
Good, thank you. And the other thing is, I know of a vernal pool I've been returning to for years, because it has all these egg, just massive amounts. I've been taking pictures for years, It's right over the Monroe line in Florida. It's on the hydropower company's property. And it's right on the edge of a parking lot. And I get where the kayakers can park when they're returning. It's where they get out. And I get irritated because they throw trash in there a lot. And, you know, I go in and pick it up, but I find it irritating. Is there, I don't know whether or not it was ever certified. And if it is, would like signage go up to say, don't throw your litter in here?
That could certainly be done with or without it being certified. And it would be a good idea. Yeah, I mean, certifying it isn't going to prevent people from throwing trash, unfortunately, but it would be worth talking to the landowner to express your concern about that.
Should I first find out if it's been certified though?
If you know it's a functional vernal pool, I mean, that's kind of a separate issue. I mean, it's already degraded by having a parking lot next to it, so maybe certification might not accomplish that much in that situation. But having them be aware that it's still a valuable breeding site and educating the public about it would be worthwhile.
Okay, thank you.
Audrey, one of the things on our list could be, you know, perhaps next year running a competition for a little "I live here" sign, and then producing some that people can ask landowners if they can install them or put them up, that would have some indication. I like the idea of locations where you can't do certain steps for protection. Maybe we can, I'll have this other resource. So let's ponder that. Thank you for that, Betsy.
Yeah, that would be a good capacity building project for a TerraCore member. Well, it's a little after 8, and so we're a few minutes over, but that's all right. I think we got to everyone's questions because I don't see any other hands raised. So I'm just gonna thank everyone for coming again, and thanks Charlie again so much for making that video, posting it, stopping in, answering everyone's questions, everything else you do. And I wrote this in the chat, but I was just gonna say it one more time, that you're all gonna be receiving a follow-up email from me probably tomorrow, with a link to all of Hilltown Land Trust's vernal pool resources, including flyers that you can give to landowners, stuff for the representatives, pamphlets, brochures that we've made, and those questions that Meredith was talking about, questions for the landowners, talking points for them. Some external resources like the Massachusetts GIS website and how to navigate that. And also, for anyone interested in going to the training next Thursday, March 11th, 10 a.m. with the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program folks, there will be a link for that. It's mostly for the representatives, but anyone can come if they want to learn how to use the website. And then we'll also be having another training for people who couldn't make that time the following week. I think that's all. Oh yes, and the list of representatives in each of our service towns, as well as their info if you want to get in touch with them to start volunteering. I think that's it. I don't know.
We really hope to connect people up with their town reps, just so that there can be communication, so one landowner isn't being reached out by multiple people. It would be wonderful if you have a contact, or you have someone that's invited you out, to be able to let the rep know, and whether you go out or the rep joins you, but so there's a good communication. And a reminder to all the reps to document time spent, people spoken with, and landowners contacted, so we can continue to record that in case you move away from the area or you decide it's not what you want to do. You can pass the binder that we gave you to the next rep. And in that way too, we can keep picking up on what was accomplished the year before.
All right, and I think that's all. So have a good night, and you'll be hearing from me soon.
Thank you all for joining us. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did.
Thank you.